Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today on this rainy day here in St. Catharines. I'm Mary Margaret Murphy, and I'm the Executive Director with Baby's Breath Canada. Since 2010, the first Sunday in May is recognized as International Bereaved Mother's Day. This day honors mothers who have lost a child. It also recognizes women who cannot be a mother due to infertility or for other health reasons. So Mother's Day, which is it's a week today, is one of the hardest days for many women. It was Carly Marie Dudley who started International Bereaved Mother's Day in honor of her stillborn son, Christian. So over the next hour, we'll be discussing grief and tips on dealing with loss and the holidays. We have two wonderful guest speakers, and we'll be making our angel heart macrame. You'll have opportunities to bid on our silent auction. However, if you don't get a chance, no worries. Our silent auction doesn't close until 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. So we hope today you will find healing, community, and know that you're not alone. So we would like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsor, BCM Insurance, for their support and generosity. So let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker, Alora Gartley. Alora is one of our very first grief counselors when we started our program. She is a registered social worker who's completed her Master's of Social Work at Wilfrid Laurier University. It's a tongue twister there. As well as her Bachelor Honors of Psychology at Brock University. Alora specializes in support of individuals and couples struggling with anxiety, depression, loss, trauma, and relationship issues. Alora also has her own practice here in St. Catharines, Nova Phoenix Counseling, which she opened in 2017. So we're excited to have Alora here today. Thank you for being here, Laura. I'm so glad to see you. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I've got some questions here for you, and for people that are watching, feel free if you have a question. I know some people in advance of this today sent in a couple questions, so feel free in the chat to message us, and we'll have her answer them. So my first question to you, because I have a few here, is what drew you to this profession?
Yeah, it's a great question. First, I just wanted to thank you for having me and welcome to everybody watching. I know for some of you being on this call, it can be a little bit challenging. So please, if you're open to it, ask any questions. I'm happy to vet any of those and answer anything you may be interested in. In terms of what drew me to the profession, I have to say it's probably my own lived experience. So growing up, I also had struggles with mental health, going through different traumatic things. And in the ways that it impacted me, it got me very interested in helping others. So I love working with trauma. I love working with grief. And that's part of what drew me to working with Baby's Breath, to support individuals and families who have gone through something similar.
Mm-hmm. And I know because we do work with first, like you do work with first responders or with I'm drawing a blank on this one. I'll circle back to that one. So you are helping people every day. How do you help yourself when you're having a bad day?
That's also a good question. So honestly, you can't help somebody else unless you're taking care of yourself first. So there's an analogy I often use with people. It's called the oxygen mask analogy. So if you've ever been on a plane, they often say you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, as opposed to giving it to somebody else. As much as you want to help other people, you honestly cannot do it unless you are fully taking care of yourself first. So one of the wonderful things that we do learn about during our master's programs is being intentional with our time and our self-care. We call it use of self. So how can you bring yourself to your practice in a way that you're taking care of other people first, or taking care of yourself first, and then in that way you can take care of others in a better way.
Yeah, so true, right? What would you say to someone who is not sure if counseling is for them? Because I'm sure you must get that a lot.
Very much so. Most people are hesitant to start therapy.
Mhm.
The very first question I ask most people is, how are you feeling about joining me today? And I'm going to say probably 95% of the time, the emotional response I get back is nervous.
Mhm.
So it's obviously very hard to be vulnerable and open up to somebody about your struggles, but it's a confidential setting. That
Mm.
information doesn't go anywhere. It stays in a safe place between you and your counselor. Most people feel anxious and uncertain, but the first appointment is typically the hardest to get to. And then once you kind of start that, it's easy to keep it going.
Mhm.
But it never hurts to try. Counseling's for anybody and everybody. It's a very down to earth, supportive environment. So I encourage anybody to seek it out, even if they've just kind of
Yeah.
briefly thought about it.
And actually, um, depending on, the person you're connecting with, they may not be a right fit. So continue to look for the right person that
Yeah.
you connect with, right?
One of my colleagues explains finding the right fit for therapy, kind of like going on dating, where you have to go on a few bad dates before you find the right fit. So many different counselors, so many different approaches. It's okay if you
Sure.
didn't find the right fit the first time, try it again. The next person might be the right fit.
Yeah, definitely. Now, the 5 stages of grief. Can you run through those quickly for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, they apply, but they're not for everybody. Well, most people are probably pretty familiar with like denial and
Right.
depression and anger and bargaining and acceptance, right? But it's not really a linear approach.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think there's some misconceptions about grief being on a timeline and
Mhm.
grief going through certain stages because it's really not like that, especially when you have lost a baby in pregnancy or an infant. It's a horrific trauma for
Mhm.
anybody to have gone through, and some people can cope in some ways and get back on their feet, but for many of my clients and people I've supported, it can take years. You never really fully overcome that grief. So I guess what I would say about those stages is don't assign yourself to thinking that you have to go through these
Yes.
steps,
Right.
right? It takes time. Be patient with yourself and take all the time you need to really recover. And you're going to experience those in different kind of like roller coaster of emotions and go through the phases at different paces. And some people never experience some of the phases. They're just some common things that you might go through.
Mhm. I remember an email I received when I first started this job, and this woman had reached out, and it had been, I think, 15 years. And she's like, I'm still struggling. And I just said, that's okay. That can happen, right? There is no
Absolutely.
timeline. There's no, because she was
Done.
like, I should be through this. And I'm like, there's no timelines, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've been supporting, families that have lost babies, whether it's been SIDS or stillbirth or miscarriages. Um, what suggestions could you give someone dealing with such a traumatic loss? What
Yeah.
are some of the first steps that they should do, once, after they've gone through something like this?
Yeah. Well, it kind of just touches back on the last question we were talking
Yeah.
about how there is no timeline. So don't assign yourself to thinking that you need to have coped with this grief or recovered
Mhm.
in such a way. Unfortunately, I think sometimes as a society, we don't know enough about mental health and trauma and the significant and long lasting impacts it can have. So be patient with yourself. The people in your life that are supportive and understand, whether that be in a group setting, family, friends, your partner, definitely utilize the people that will validate and hold space
Mm.
for you so that you don't feel quite so isolated and that you do know that your feelings are normal. I do think that's really important. Know that it's not your fault.
Mm.
I would say that's the number one negative belief I hear from a lot of moms that I work with or families that I work with is that they blame themselves,
Right.
and it's not.
Yeah.
Um, their fault. So that's something that we really have to do a lot of work on reframing in therapy. Um, know your triggers, find healthy ways to cope with those triggers, and seek therapy, right?
Mhm.
Therapy can help significantly. Modern therapy is amazing. It's got some really great tools in terms of processing through trauma. And myself and my colleague Ashley on my team, who do work through baby's breath, we're both trained in those treatment modalities that treat trauma, and we've both seen significant improvements for ourselves and our clients, so we can really attest to its effectiveness in helping things get better. So don't wait
Yeah.
to seek help.
Exactly. And the thing, and I think you've said it, is your timeline is your timeline, right? So whether you seek help right away or a week or what have you, it's what when it works for you.
Exactly. There's no rush.
Hmm. And so the today being International Brave Mother's Day, and we have Mother's Day coming up next week, and so I know through Baby's Breath that on our social media we're always posting things. It's Easter, it's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, and all of that, and we do realize that over the holidays are difficult for many families, but for those that are really struggling with a loss, what tips would you suggest um, that would help get through those days when everyone else is celebrating? You're seeing it on Facebook. You're seeing everyone like posting pictures of, what tips do you have for anyone struggling?
For sure. I think that's an important question because holidays are absolutely something I see come up in therapy sessions that clients are very much struggling with. So, for some people, holidays are a time that you want to spend with family and friends and be around them. And for some, that's great. If being around people helps you, spend the time with your family and friends. But a trend I've noticed in working with families that have gone through loss is they actually prefer to be on their own during the
Oh.
holidays and kind of just in their immediate family. And so if that's just you and your partner, then no problem. Take that
Hmm.
day to just take care of you guys. I also recommend, take a break from social media or the news because sometimes that can be triggering and, you have to be very um, gentle and delicate with your feelings around the holidays. So minimizing any triggers of seeing other people with families or pregnancy announcements, like it's just so triggering. So take a break from those if you can. And then the
Hmm.
other thing I would say too that I've found very helpful for clients is find something meaningful or memorable to remember your loved one during
Hmm.
that day. So I've seen people, they'll do like a tree planting or they'll still celebrate their baby's birthday. Anything that really just kind of makes that day memorable and meaningful. You're not meant to just move on and forget them. Like they're your child, they're a part of your life. So do anything you can to make that day memorable and meaningful for you.
Ah, some great ideas. Thank you. So we do have a question from one of our participants. And her question is around being able, or so is being um, sad that her son isn't with us. So I've got the question here. So let me just, so, um, sh being sad that her son isn't with them, but also being happy and proud of the two kids that she does get to share her day with. Her husband's mother died a few years ago, and it's been a hard balance of happy and sad each Mother's Day. So,
Mhm.
what would you say to this person?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for the question. I think it's important that people reach out and express what they're needing support with. There's actually a term that we use in a therapy called DBT that helps to explain sort of that phenomena of having the two different feelings. And the term is called dialectics, which is essentially finding the gray area or the balance between two opposites. So it
Mm,
doesn't need to be happy or sad, but that you can be sad and happy at the same time. You can be devastated and grieving that you don't have your son with you, but also very happy and like grateful to have the time that you do with your other children, right? So
mhm,
it's very possible for two opposites to exist at the same time, and that's quite normal. Grief is never just one emotion, it's usually a flurry and a tornado of many emotions.
I bet.
So I would say that's quite normal to feel both things at the same time.
Okay. And one more question here. What is the best way to help someone who is grieving?
Mm.
Because I know, I mean, there are some questions they're just you do not ask. But what is the best way to help someone who is grieving?
Good question. So, unfortunately, I think sometimes we want to offer platitudes or statements that we're hoping will kind of motivate the person to feel better. But in my experience, those unfortunately can be more harmful than helpful. So, it's a lot of just holding space.
Mm,
So that person's going to be sitting in the darkness and in their grief for weeks, months, potentially even years in some cases, depending on the trauma behind their grief and emotions. So hold space.
mm,
Don't try to push them out of it. Offer them, here's some resources, here's some therapies for that professional support, but also just a lot of validation and holding space for what they need versus trying to offer like monuments of hope, because it's unfortunately it's just not as helpful as we would like it to be, and the
mhm.
person has to come to that on their own terms.
Yeah, I think one of the, and I've seen this a couple, sometimes people say, well, you can always have another baby, or, and maybe it's just sitting with that person, just you're right, letting them be in their grief
Yeah,
and giving them the space. I think a lot of people are well-meaning, but sometimes it's tough. And I mean, I do remember a grandmother coming up to me, and she's like, I'm so afraid to talk and say something. And I think too, and I said, well, they just want to know you haven't forgotten either. So
mm,
another thing, right? And that, what, they may cry, but that's okay. Like it's going to happen. So, but just, be there for them and let them know that you're there if they need you.
completely agree. Baby's breath. You guys had posted a really wonderful post about that the one day about don't be afraid to bring up my child because I haven't forgotten them. So
Hmm.
you reminding me about them isn't like, oh yeah, because you think about them every single day and in
Absolutely.
so many moments. So even though somebody's crying, you're not triggering that, and they're actually probably quite grateful that you're remembering their baby as much as they do and that hurt they feel every single day.
Exactly. Well, Laura, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking time. And, I know you're busy, and it's Sunday. So thank you again. I'm
Having
sure everyone, really appreciated sort of your wisdom that you provided today.
No problem. And if anybody's looking for support, reach out to Baby's Breath or ourselves at Nova Phoenix Counseling. I don't think either have a wait list. So um, just reach out if you need
Reach out.
anything.
Absolutely. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Oh, I mean, she's wonderful. I'm sure all of you would agree. Um, Up next, it's my pleasure to introduce Kathy Cooper, who will be introducing our next guest speaker. Kathy works for BCM Insurance. She is an auto underwriter who works in their Welland office. So we're thrilled to actually have BCM as our sponsor today. Here's a little bit about Kathy. So Kathy became pregnant with her first child in September 2012 and delivered her daughter, Ainsley. A week later, her newborn suddenly became ill, and it was quickly confirmed that Ainsley was going into heart failure. Unfortunately, about a month after they initially arrived at Sick Kids Hospital, Ainsley was then given 24 to 48 hours to live. This is when Kathy and her husband Tyler tried a different approach with their remaining time with Ainsley. They filled the hospital room with only love, positivity, created as many memories as they reasonably could. Sorry. Sadly, in January of 2013, at 109 days old, Ainsley passed away peacefully at home. She lived about 2 months longer than what the doctors had thought. No amount of time with Ainsley could ever have been enough, but every day that they did have with their daughter was such a gift. And they wanted to honor and give back in memory of their daughter. So they began fundraisers and toy drives to give back to sick kids. With the amount of money they've raised over the years, Ainsley's name is now proudly displayed on a plaque at Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. Kathy is so proud of her firstborn and uses opportunities such as these in order to help honor her daughter, Ainsley Marie, and her life. So please welcome Kathy Cooper to introduce our next guest speaker.
It is my pleasure to introduce you all to Cheryl. Cheryl and her husband Greg have been married since 2017. They're going to be celebrating their 5-year wedding anniversary this year in September. In 2020, they decided to start their family, and Cheryl became pregnant in July of 2020, and her due date was March 28th of 2021. Her pregnancy was a normal one. When she did go into labor, she quickly rushed to the hospital. It was there at the hospital that she found out that there was no heartbeat. It was a little girl that they chose to name Pearl. Cheryl found out about baby's breath through a friend and reached out for some support. They connected Cheryl to Emily, who then gave Cheryl a bereavement package. Cheryl wanted to do something special, though, for her daughter in order to honor her. Christmas was coming, and Cheryl had an idea. She came up with pearl tree ornament and shared this with her family and her friends. Her goal was to raise some money for baby's breath. To her surprise, that fundraiser took off, and she's raised over $11,575. And that's in memory of her daughter, Pearl. In fact, to this day, Baby's Breath continues to still receive donations on behalf of Pearl. Cheryl is a teacher, an avid crafter, and is here to tell us how crafting has helped her through her grief. Please help me in welcoming Cheryl.
Hello, Cheryl. I'm so
Hello.
glad that you're here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm already a
I
little
know.
bit emotional, so I figured let's just get the tears out there right away, and then
Yeah.
I'll be all right.
I choked up so many times reading her bio. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope I can get through this. And then if you notice in the background was the picture of her baby. So yeah, I mean, I think we all have been through this. So when we all know that, yes, this is very emotional for today.
Yeah.
And
I'm happy to be
I'm
here.
so glad you helped us. Actually, when we were discussing, or I had this idea for this event, and you and I had connected in December, and I was just so taken back with your idea, and I love the ornament, and as we were connecting and talking, and I was talking to you about this event. I mean, this is where we came up with this idea for today, International Bereaved Mother's Day. And so I can't thank you enough for all your support, because one of the things that always struck me about you is just, I mean, even though you had such a traumatic loss, you're just so bubbly and just so gracious and just so kind. And so I'm so thrilled that you are here today. So
Well, thank
I
you.
wanted to ask you, so I've got some questions for you too.
Perfect. Great.
And again, anyone that has questions, feel free to pop it into chat. And I mean, I know, and I don't want to, we shared your story on the website for this event, and she did, Kathy did talk a little bit about, your journey and what happened with you. But I really wanted to kind of focus on the counseling, because you didn't know about Baby's Breath, and you had a friend that made a donation, and you did some research and you reached out. But the counseling, I just wanted, what kind of impact did that counseling have on you? Because I think you reached out fairly quickly, when you, after you got home and, from the hospital,
Yeah.
or days later, I think.
I was trying to remember when I actually reached out. I think it was at least a couple weeks. Like I feel like in those first 2 weeks, I didn't do a whole lot.
No.
But it was, again, and it was in those weeks that a friend of mine, she dropped off a gift, and in her card had said she had made a donation to Baby's Breath in honor of Pearl. And that's when I had to go and Google Baby's Breath, because I had not heard of it.
Yeah.
And it was, again, I went on the website to request the bereavement package that came with the charm. I was like, I would like that. I want all the things. When you lose your baby, I want all the keepsakes I can get.
Right.
But it was, what I found most helpful was how quickly. I remember getting an email from you shortly after saying, we've sent the bereavement package, and copied on this email is Emily, one of our counselors. Emily then sent me an email following that saying, I have an opening on Tuesday. And it was, I think, on the weekend. And I think taking that first step, like you discussed with Alora, that first counseling, is the hardest. I've had multiple counselors and counseling over the last year, and the first one is the hardest because saying what happened out loud is hard. So the fact that, sorry,
Oh, that's okay.
all of us is hard. Everyone,
Yep.
if you've experienced, you know. But it was the fact that Baby's Breath got it going, because sometimes taking that leap to get that help that you know you need.
Right.
Everyone will tell you, "Oh, are you seeing someone who talk?" Like, I knew it was what we needed to do, but even just to get there,
Yes.
it can be hard. So the
Yeah.
fact that it was set up so easily and so quickly, it was kind of like, okay, Tuesday it is. They just kind of went with it, and then really connected with Emily. My husband Greg and I did the counseling together,
Good.
and that was really nice. He's not like I'm talk about how I feel to everyone and anyone all the time. Greg is like, it's hard, I don't want to talk about it. So having those sessions together allowed us to have both of our times to talk, to connect with each other as well as with the counselor to get, you know, support. And we extended our sessions and did, you know, as many as we were able to. And I think that it was significant in showing me that that was something that worked for me.
Good.
I found other things that I had tried. Not, you kind of have to work out what your grief process looks like. And for me, I found that counseling helped because things are constantly changing. As more time passes, you think, oh, maybe it's going to get easier, but I found it was harder. I was like, I don't like that I'm getting further away, and it was complicated. So as things are constantly changing, to have continuous sessions with the counselor, you can address those changing emotions, because it's not a, we talked about it now and now I know what to do, because it's always changing.
It's always changing. Exactly. One of the things that always struck me, you know, in our conversations, you would be like, I've made this, I've made that. Because when we were discussing, and I think you found crafting as a great outlet for your grief.
And in fact, it was actually in one of my last counseling sessions with Emily that she had me bring material. She said, you are going to be working on something while we talk. And just to have different parts of your brain working at the same time while addressing grief and like that creative side. And I found it really therapeutic. It was therapy, but it was in a different way. And I have always enjoyed making things. And so I continued to kind of do that. And that was some of her feedback for me, was like, those are the things, like, if that brings you joy, and like, it's also a helpful distraction. It keeps you busy, you know, you're in control of what you're doing. And sometimes with grief, it's just that loss of control that's impossible to be able to handle. That, like, I found, and often when I craft, I'm making something to gift to someone else. So connecting that as well, doing things for others is like, I love that side of it. So it kind of allowed me to create and use other parts of my brain and process and have that just like me time. But in the end, it was a result of being able to gift something to someone else that I was proud of and excited about. And all of that just contributed to like just feeling good. Did it eliminate the hard days and the grief and the sadness? No, but it layered in some joy within those moments. And that has been my focus, is where can I layer
in. I like that. I like how you say that, layer in. Yeah, definitely. Because as you know, we heard from Laura, like, yes, you can be happy and you can be sad.
Yeah, I made a note of what she called it, because I was like, that has been the most challenging thing in the last year for me. Is I've always been a very emotional person and fairly in tune with how I feel and why, and being able to self-reflect. But the conflicting emotions, that's new. And that's been challenging to, like, is this normal? Is this right? Like, how can I be feeling two conflicting things about the same, situation. And that's been something I still am trying to navigate, because even though I recognize that it's normal, it's a thing, it still hits me in ways that I'm like, processing and still working
processing. Yeah.
through.
So the fundraiser. So let's talk a little bit about the fundraiser.
Okay.
And I just thought maybe share a little bit more details, like how you came up with it, because it was such a great ornament. Like it was so cute, but there's some hidden or meanings on the pearls that were in there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I have one here that I
oh,
pulled
cool.
off my tree. It's probably not one of the nicest ones because I sent all the nice ones out.
Yeah.
But to give the idea. So
Yep.
how it came to be, Christmas was approaching and I was feeling overwhelmed. I personally find the lead up to any milestone or holiday harder than the actual day itself. And Christmas was like a big one. Like it was like months before that I was like, Christmas is coming. And of course, because the whole season of Christmas starts the day after Halloween. So it was just something that I knew I needed to do something to honor Pearl. And I really wanted to do something that involved other people. My husband and I, we think about Pearl, remember and honor her daily.
Yeah.
But for me, it's having other people, like same with talking with Alora. There, people then when they feel bad, oh, I didn't mean to make you cry, or if they cry, I'm like, I am always the one crying. If you cry with me, I appreciate it. Like I like when other people, like it's nice to know that I'm not the only one that's still really sad.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something that, other people could participate in so that we could feel, less alone in our grief. And so the fundraiser, that idea gave us the opportunity to honor Pearl with others, while also paying it forward to other parents who are grieving by donating whatever we had raised to Baby's Breath to support, the counseling program that we found so much value in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think what was interesting, the pearls on the bottom, 9 represent how many months she would have been.
Just
Right.
after Christmas. That's right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make something special. I called my cousin who's
Yep.
very into crafting. She had suggested the wire angel ornament. She had made them before, said that they were relatively easy to do. So we got together and then kind of had to figure out exactly how to make them. We had some rough copies that didn't make the cut, but eventually that's what we had come up with. So we used the large pearl for the head, and then the 9 pearls on the bottom, they represented not only the 9 months, like she would have been 9 months December 29th, but we were pregnant for 9 months and 1 day. So it also represented the time that we had with Pearl. And it was just like, maybe not everyone who donated and received it knew that message, but it was what I knew, and it was special to me that's what that represented. And then it just blew my mind how many we ended up making and how successful it became. It really made a difference.
It did. And it obviously made a difference for us too, because again, we do fundraising for our grief counseling, and last year was a difficult year, with the pandemic and what we were, we were having to isolate at home for like 2 years. It's been 2 years. It's been, and we do rely on that. And I just remember our conversation after it, and you're like, guess how much we raised. And I'm like, oh, okay, 2,000. And you're like, higher. And I'm like, okay, 5,000. You're like, higher. And I'm just like, holy, we just kept going up and up and up. And it was just a wonderful, I think for Baby's Breath, a great Christmas present for us. But also too, that it helps us understand how important the work that we do, and the how important the counseling is, and that, we do see, for us, understanding that it's having an impact, and it's helping people.
Yeah.
I thought today I wanted to share or have you talk about the birthday party you did for Pearl, because I thought this was such a great idea, and just if you could tell everyone sort of what you planned and what you did for her party, I think
For
it
sure.
it was I thought, what a great idea.
So last month, March 29th, would have been her first birthday. And similar to Christmas, I was feeling very anxious about reaching that date and how I would feel and how it would go. So I knew I needed to do something in the same sense that, with the fundraiser, it kept me busy. I was making ornaments, mailing them out, like all of the planning and it stuff that went with it kept me busy and distracted in a way, but I'm okay with admitting that, like, distraction is a strategy, and it's helpful for these hard times.
Mhm.
So in the same way, I know planning helps me to focus my attention. So we decided to plan a kid's birthday party, and the idea is like that ideally we would like to do it every year, hoping that someday Pearl's future siblings will be at that party and know that we celebrate their sister. And what we did, we rented the church we go to, the hall. We had a bouncy castle. I booked a magician that I had seen and loved a few months back. We had craft tables everywhere, so there was a lot of creating and craftiness for the kids to do. We also, what else did we have? We had food and drinks and balloons and just a day for all of our nieces and nephews, and everyone in my life has kids, which it surprisingly is not as difficult as I thought maybe it could be. It's actually it brings joy kind of seeing those kids, and I remind myself often that other people's children do not take away from mine
Right.
and my future kids. So
Yeah.
it's okay. And I'm happy to see them running around. Is it hard? And did I cry at the party? Of course I
Of
did.
course.
But it was just a nice way to, again, remember and celebrate Pearl with all of the people closest to us that also love her as much as we
Yeah.
do. So
Well,
it was a nice day.
I think what's great is that, her cousins, it's important for them to know that they did have a cousin, and that, as they get older,
Yeah,
that they'll be like, remember her. And
absolutely.
it's exactly what Laura was talking about, right? It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to share and do things that, honor her memory and keep her memory alive. And of course you're going to cry.
Yeah.
I have learned in this job, I cry all the time sometimes, but but doing whether you have a birthday party or you don't, or if you take time just to be with yourself that day, and or you spend time with family. It's
Yeah.
what works for you and what helps you, get through that day.
I agree. And I know, like, for us, we did the party a couple of days before. And then for her actual birthday, I just wanted to be with
Mhm.
Greg. I think my mom had messaged me saying, "Do you want to come over? We could do dinner that day." And I was like, nope, nope. That day itself, I want to be alone. And so I could really, resonate with what Alora was saying, that's sometimes the direction and what you need. And I think, and I even on one of the Facebook groups that I'm on, I saw a mom asking the group about the idea of having a party, and is that weird or is it right? And I totally understand, because I had those same like having a party, like, we're not celebrating, but we're celebrating her memory. But it was hard to kind of get past that idea of, like, is this okay to do? And unfortunately, you have those doubts,
Of course.
because you don't.
You're human.
and none of it makes any sense.
Yes.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think the important thing is like for us, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So getting past that, what are people going to think, or is this weird? Like it's not about that. It's trusting yourself in the what you need, and then you'll realize that the people that love you will support. Like my friends showed up and were like, "No, that's not a weird idea. That's great. We're doing this." And I had so much help, and people show up with ideas and things to support that party that again, it just allowed me to recognize that, like, okay, if I can just stop doubting myself and trust that this intuition of what I want to do to love my daughter is okay, then people support that and show up for that.
They get on board. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And they're there for you.
absolutely.
Yeah, that I'm so glad that you shared that today, and I mean, and everything you do. Um, um, and as I mentioned before, we still do get every once in a while we'll get a donation, and it's in memory of Pearl, and I think just she'll never be forgotten, and yeah, we're so. We're so thankful for you, and I think
Likewise.
you're planning to stick around, and I think we're
Yes.
actually going to probably head in. So this angel heart macrame is something that you made,
Yes.
and when I saw it, I was like, oh, I really like it. It's so pretty, and it looks fairly easy to make, I think. But you're sticking around.
Yeah.
And I think we've got Tim who's going to bring up the video. But I think before we do that, Cheryl, like any tips right now? There you were frozen for just a second.
Yeah, it was glitchy there for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah. So with this angel heart macrame item. So before we get started, so any kind of tips and tricks before we get started? And I know you're going to be here and we're going to stop it as we go along if we need to.
Yeah. So what we'll do, we'll go through the video. It's about 6 minutes long. It's step by step and it's really straightforward. Okay. So for those that either have already received their package or if you signed up late and haven't gotten it yet, you'll get your kit. You'll get the link to the video. And the best way is going to be to watch it on your own time where you can pause where you need to, rewind, rewatch any steps that you need to look at. We'll go through it today. I'll have a couple comments and notes just as we go, or if anyone has any questions, put those in the chat so that when you go to do it on your own, you'll be set. Because the expectation is not that in the next 6 minutes, we're all going to have them done. In fact, I'm so picky when I come to crafts, it takes me much longer. So if anyone is like me, that might be your process. So we'll go through it. And yeah, I've got a couple notes as the video goes through. But like I said, the best way to be to watch that video and be able to pause and relook at things. But it should be easy enough. I'm like very confident in all of you that you will be able to figure it out.
To do it. Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, let's roll the video.
Perfect.
Hey guys, so today we're going to make the heart ornament, and I have my wooden ring, I have my 12 pieces of cord cut to 18 inches, and we're going to attach them with the lark's head knot. So you fold it in half, you find the center point, and just go through the loop like that, open it up through the bottom, and you pull it through, and then tighten it.
So if we just want to pause it quickly here, I'll just note that when you're doing the lark's head knot, and don't worry if you don't know the names of any of these knots, as long as you can figure out how to do them. I couldn't tell you the names of half of them. But you'll want to make sure that they all go the same way. So like this example, I don't know if it would be easier if I was full screen again for a second, if that's possible. If not, I can just Oh, where's my
There
camera
we-
here? But if you look at this one here, they're going two different ways. So you've got the
Right.
one that is the loop is behind. This one, it is in front. You want to make sure they all go the same way. So I would just pull one of those off. And it's really just the way that you loop it through to put it through your loop. So you can just take it off. Oh, and then sometimes I do it the wrong way. Of course. So you can just redo it. But all you want to do is make sure that each time oh my gosh, I did it the wrong way again. Okay, I'm going to pay closer attention
So
to which way
clearly,
I'm going to do this.
clearly
Here
we
we go.
will not be making this in 6 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, there. So
There we
all
go.
the same way. So like for that, for example,
Yeah.
where they look the same each time. If it doesn't look the same, whichever one's different, pull it off,
Pull it off.
swap it around. And if you can't figure out which way to put it on the loop, like I just did, you might have to do it a couple times. But
Awesome.
all
All right.
we'll keep going.
Okay, as you can see, I've attached all 12 of the cord using the lark's head knot. And now today we're actually going to work from the behind because we don't want these ones showing. So there we go, and we're just going to go through and give it one last tightening. Make sure that they're all lined up. That looks good. And we're going to take half and half, so we'll go 6 lark's head knot on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Make sure that's 6. There we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the very first cord here, and we're going to do clove hitch knots, double hitch knots I should say, and we're going to work our way all the way down to the center. So this is going to be our filler cord, and we'll take the very next one and we go over like that, so it's a figure 4 on top, go through that loop and then pull it in nice and tight.
So the key for this part
So
is
for
just to make
each
sure the same
of the
cord
cords,
is
the
the one
working
that
cords, we're
follows
gonna do
down,
that twice.
and that it's just all the others that you're using as to do the knots around it. So you want
And you
that.
do each one twice, right?
That's right. Yeah. And this is probably the trickiest part. And I watched this part of the video multiple times because all of a sudden she speeds up. I do not operate that quickly.
Yeah.
But if you're doing the figure 4 over top and just continuing
Okay, now
that
we've done
pattern,
all
it
6 of
makes it easier
those.
to just keep going.
So it should be 12 cords total. And now we're going to stop there in the center, and we're going to do the same to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So taking that first one, and we're going to work our way down.
I just realized the Christmas music that's playing in the background.
Yeah.
Now
I
that
love
we've
it.
done both sides,
Yeah.
I'm going to connect the two. I'm going to continue using this right hand guide rope, and I'm going to tie that guide rope from the left hand side, and I'm going to do 2 of the same knots to join them in the center.
Ah,
So that one you'll want to pull tight enough that it like brings them
brings
together.
it together.
And again, the nice part of
So
this
now
is
you can
that
see it's starting
you can
to take
undo any of your knots to redo it if you need to.
And I will start to trim.
So with the trimming,
Just
one, I would
under
recommend you have a good pair of scissors.
inch.
Also, you'll notice there's a lot of extra cord that you have to work with. So
Right.
you could trim as much or as little as you want. You trim first and then you'll be combing it out. So if you wanted to, like, she trims it fairly short. If you wanted to leave it a little bit longer, just so you have more to work with when shaping the heart,
Right.
or if you want it to stick out a bit
More. Yeah.
wider. So,
Okay.
but again, a good pair of scissors will be a good
Yeah, for
tip
sure.
there.
I'm going to do it fairly close to the same size the entire way around, and then we will work more on the shape after. Okay, now that I've done the first trim, I'm just going to use this pet brush, or you can use a regular comb. Actually, I'll use my pet brush just because it's easier. And I'm just going to work my way around. As you can see, I have combed it out completely. I flipped it over and I combed from each side. Now we're going to kind of follow this, and we're going to make it shorter on the top parts to make it the real shape of a heart. It'll come out right here and then come in a little bit down here.
So if you're, again, picky like I am, the shaping can take a while or like be tricky. But again, if you give yourself some extra cord, then you can
yes. Then you can still you have plenty to play around with.
Right.
So now to finish it off, I'm going to take that piece of jute, fold it in half, find the center just as we did with the others, pull it through there, make a hoop on top, and I'm just going to pull it nice and tight so those two are lined up. And you can add a little wooden bead there, whatever you'd like. But for me, I'm just going to tie a regular knot at the top. And it's done.
And it's that easy.
You can work in super speed. It'll take you 6 minutes.
Exactly. And, thank you. So for those that are watching today that maybe registered, and maybe haven't gotten your package or registered today, we'll send out the package. And so keep an eye out for it in your mail. And then I think you put in the package, like the link to the email or to the video so that they can follow along.
I didn't put it in because I hand wrote the cards out. So the best way would probably be if we email the link, because then you can just click it instead of having to type in.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know this morning I sent out an email to everyone that had signed up already with obviously the link for the event today, but also the link to the video as well. So it's there in that email as well. So Cheryl, thank you so much today for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm just so pleased that you could take time today. I mean, I know as a teacher, you've got a busy week ahead of you. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. And happy Mother's Day to everyone. And thank you for joining us.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
So that's it for today. I just would like to take this opportunity to thank our speakers, Laura, Cheryl, and Kathy, and for all their support today in helping us with this event. I would like to thank BCM Insurance for being a sponsor of this event. Don't forget silent auction. So if you're bidding on any of the items, that closes at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. So if you're the lucky winner, you'll hear from us over the next couple of days. And also a thank you to the people that did donate to our silent auction. Again, it takes many hands to put an event together. And I also want to thank our behind the scene tech guys from Stay at Home Fundraising. They make this look so easy, but I know they're like just, handling so much in behind the scenes. So to Drew and Tim, I thank you so much for making me look good. So that's it for today. So thank you for joining us. Don't forget, there is a survey. There'll be a link in the chat. So we value your feedback. So please let us know how what you thought of this event. maybe if there's some ideas for next year. This is our first time doing this event, and we will definitely be doing something again next year. So fill out the survey. I know it's a little bit early, but our Wave of Light event will be October 15th this year. We're going to start working on putting that event together. But yes, mark your calendars, and we hope you can join us on October 15th. So thank you again. Take care and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.